Everyone associated with West Ham United has been deeply saddened by the death of popular, long serving club photographer Steve Bacon. Born in East London in 1952, Bacon grew up a boyhood West Ham fan and dreamt of becoming a full time professional sports photographer. He began by taking photos at West Ham Speedway in Custom House as a teenager, and whilst working at West Ham Speedway, that's when he got his big break. He met photographer Arthur Edwards, who ran Tower Hamlet Studios, and ultimately asked the young Bacon to take on local agency work for him. In 1976, Bacon was offered the job covering West Ham United home and away games for the Recorder. He initially turned the offer down before changing his mind. He got to be a regular at West Ham, and he got to take some of the most iconic photos that we as fans remember. John Lyall invited Bacon back to be part of the Inner Sanctum in 1980, and he spent over 30 years as the club's official photographer. He was a fan on the terrace, and he even had a song. He became a cult hero amongst the fan base. And our condolences go to him and his family. Rest in peace. A very good evening to you. Welcome to the West Ham Weekly on the West Ham Voice on a Monday night. I would like to think that you're all doing well, that you had a restful weekend, but it's not been great, has it? The weekend, I mean, I think we're grateful, aren't we, that we've got an international break. It's the last one now this year, this calendar year, and not one now till I think March, I think. So we can just focus on the football. And I think some of us are probably wishing that we didn't have to focus on the football because it's not getting any better, really. It seems to be getting an awful lot worse by the looks of things. Look, forgive me for sounding like a broken record, but if you're new to the channel, please do consider becoming a subscriber of the channel if you appreciate the content. And whether you're a new subscriber, an existing subscriber, or just passing through, please do hit that like button for me as well. I'm going to talk about Lopetegui and the situation that he's in at this moment in time, and then ask, because I'm not so sure that very many people have been asking, well, who exactly is in charge of Lopetegui? And if it is Tim Steidten, then does he take some of the blame for having hired Lopetegui? We'll talk about that later. First of all, a few shout outs. Hello to Bob, who I had a very brief chat with about Steidten on my way to the pub before the game as I was coming out of Stratford Station. Nice to have met you, Bob. Thanks for stopping and chatting. Also to Gary, who said hello as we were coming into the stadium. Danny Holly, appreciate you saying hello as well, mate. And Chris Mills, we were putting the world to rights, weren't we? Or certainly the West Ham world to rights after the game as we were coming out of the Bobby Moore Lower. And both agreed it was pretty poor. But also a special mention to James Horton, who I had a really good chat with him at half time. And thank you for that, mate. So thank you so much for the kind words. And my condolences to you with regards to the loss of your mother earlier this year as well. But it was really nice meeting and chatting to you too. Right. I know what's going to happen because I'm looking at the comment count and it's gone up to 215, which means it's going to take me all night to get through them. But I guess I better say hello to one or two of you because it seems like you lot have got an awful lot to say tonight. So I'm going to do what I normally do before I get into the bulk of the show itself and say good evening to you all. Good evening to you, Matt. I hope you're well. Good evening to you, Epic. How are you? I'm going to go through very quickly. We've got some tough fixtures coming up. How many F-ups can we afford before the team around us gain their points? It ain't a good look at the moment. It isn't. I totally agree, and I'm sure we'll discuss this even more. Ironically, and I know you're going to think I'm crazy, I still don't think we're going to fall into a relegation battle. I'm going to be wrong, and you're going to tell me why I'm going to be wrong. But I do see at this moment in time, I do see at least 4 or 5 teams that are worse than us, and I know that's really hard to believe. Epic, how many strong performances have we had in the 6 months that Lopetegui's been here? We've had flashes, haven't we? You know, half a game against Man City, 20 minutes against another team, 10 minutes against so-and-so. But it's not enough, really, is it? Happy 58th birthday to your dad, mate. Happy birthday to him. Good evening to you, usual. Good evening to you, Leslie. I hope you're well. Make West Ham great again. I know where that's coming from. Any truth in reports that the senior sources allegedly contacted the Zambian, FA to negotiate compensation to Reece Avram for his contract, save our season? Well, you've heard it here first. Avram could be walking. If you spot Avram in the McDonald's in Stratford, you know he's the next manager of West Ham United. Ray, good evening. Good evening to you, Shaky. Good evening to you, Danny Boy. I hope you're well, mate. Bumped into Avram. There you go. He was working in Spitalfields. There you go. He's seen him already. Good evening to you, Toha. How are you? I'm really going to smash through these. So my apologies if I'm going to be a bit too quick. Hammerette, good evening to you. I hope you're well. James, how are you, mate? I hope you're well. Shaky, watching some old big match revisited West Ham games at the Bowling took me back there and leave me. Believe me, we had an identity and passion. We now have become a rudderless brand. It's not great. I mean, you know, I hate to say this, but even under Moyes, we had some kind of identity, didn't we? It may not have been the one that we all wanted, but at least it was there. Not that I'm advocating for Moyes to come back. I did that last week. I did for those of you who may have missed it, I sort of said last week, I was told that it doesn't matter how desperate it gets, West Ham are not going back for Moyes for the 3rd time. Well, that's what I was told. Don't shoot the messenger. Oliver, good evening to you. It will have to be Sullivan who makes the decision and Brady to deliver the message only after a major fan protest or some other humiliation. Well, I did say this the other week. Let's not forget what happened with the last fan protest. We ended up getting Pellegrini, and that didn't go too well either. Not that I'm saying we shouldn't protest. Do it in the right way, I guess. Good evening, Anthony. How are you? If you're talking about Brian Moore, the big match fame, actually he did support Gillingham. That is true. But he had a very soft spot for West Ham United. James, Sullivan will only go for managers who have Premier League experience. So I'm not surprised at all at Rodgers being top of the list. Rodgers, I haven't really put much thought about Rodgers. Half of me would say, would I mind? Maybe not. The other half is going, is there better? Maybe there is. Who else have we got here? Leslie, Loopy's theme. Please release me, let him go, because I love him. He's been. I like that. Howard, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Who else have we got in here tonight? Christ, God, you lot are trigger happy tonight, aren't you? So many comments. Do forgive me. I'm trying to get a few in. Gatesy, good evening, mate. I hope you have some good news about Lopetegui leaving. He isn't the man for West Ham United. I don't have any news about Lopetegui leaving. And anyone that tells you that they have is going to be lying. Because the other day, as you know, I put a show out on Sunday talking about the possibility of Lopetegui leaving, i.e. apparently someone in the Sunday Times newspaper reported that the board were meeting this week to talk about Lopetegui's future. And then when I put that show out, I should have asked maybe before I put that show out. I asked later on in the evening, any truth in this? And a few messages were swapped, and apparently not. I think they are meeting. Will they talk about that? I'm certain they'll meet. Like I said in the show I did on Sunday, you'll have those regular meetings and you will talk about what's going on. But will it be a meeting about sacking Lopetegui? I just don't know at this moment in time. You know, and as I said in the show, it wouldn't surprise me if he gets sacked. It wouldn't surprise me if they keep him here. HV, good evening to you. Don't know what to believe at the moment. There you go. There you go. That sums it right up. Who else have we got here in tonight? James H, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining, James. Thank you for joining, mate. Graham, good evening, mate. Rest in peace, Steve. Sadly, I sense the total apathy will be the end of our club, and it does not seem that far away. How many fans even care anymore about the results? You know what? I did do the preview. I did the preview on Friday, I think it was. And I did say, I said it's going to be a turgid game. I said it was going to be a boring game. But I also said, we'll scrape it 2-1. And a few of my mates went, it's got 0-0 written all over it. And they were right. It was absolutely abysmal. Avid. And we go. And actually, Graham, it was more exciting having a drink after the game than it was being at the game. Avid, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Would be better if I'd seen a corner flag post this morning, but I knew we would be stuck with Lopetegui until the end of the year at earliest. And I did suggest, I said earlier in the season, I said, look, I'll give him to the end of October. And then as the end of October was looming large, I went, don't look like anything's going to happen then. And then I said, the board aren't going to make a decision until the end of the calendar year. And I think that's pretty much where they're going. But I'll come back to all that in a minute after I've chatted to you guys and said hello. Paul, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Good evening to you, Colin. How are you, mate? I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Again, Mr. McLaren, how are you? Not the greatest game, but company was good and no drink. At least I didn't have a drink. I mean, that's the thing, you end up, taking to the booze. And I said, I'm not drinking today, which was Saturday. And thank goodness I kept to that. A little bit. Idowu, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Keep up your... Thank you very much. Much appreciated. And thank you for joining. Good evening to you, Wasim. How are you? Thank you very much indeed. Yes, hit that like button, people. Don't forget. Good evening, Stephen. How are you? I hope you're well. What other comments have we got here? Kent, how are you, mate? Always a pleasure to have you on. If any of you are on... shall I promote you? Yeah. If any of you on Facebook, look for Kent Irons group. It's a great group. And Kent runs it really, really well. And it's a fantastic group. Evening horrible turgid football. I gave it 11 league games, but I can't get on board with Lopetegui. He needs to go. We need a progressive manager with different tactics. We are too slow sideways play. This is the thing, and I said in the review I did, the one thing that is clearly missing, yes, we need a striker. Of course we do. We need a striker that's going to have, he's got agile, he's got pace, etc. But ironically, the area that I didn't think we would need to improve on is the centre of the park. We need someone that can take the game by the scruff of the neck and really get it going. If only we had a Fofana or someone like that. And we did chase Fofana, who eventually went to AC Milan. But that, at this moment in time, that's exactly what we're missing. We can pass it wide, we can get the wingers going, etc., etc. That middle of the park is deadly slow. Ralph, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Please, if you've got any crypto, get some as soon as possible. Sack J-Lo, football is dire. It is. Kimbo, how are you, mate? I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Good evening to you, Daniela. How are you? I hope you're well. Frog in a well. Good evening, mate. 6 months. We haven't won 2 Premier League games on the bounce on the whole in 2024. I know. Not good. Leslie, I'm well, mate. I hope you're well. Good evening to you, Kez. How are you? Thank you for joining. Dexter, I'm very well. I'm normally glass half full, but I have to admit it's not looking great right now. Hopefully the international break is a blessing in disguise to bounce back. But will it? We kind of hope that the last international break was going to give us that bounce back, and that didn't happen. And we thought that the previous one, and that didn't happen as well. Am I expecting anything different after this one? If Lopetegui's there, probably not, to be quite honest with you. P-Gads, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Joined up with the Detroit Hammers group to watch the game. It felt more like an emotional... Oh, dear. Absolutely. Yes, I've got that in, and we'll cover that later. Ted, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Anthony, how are you, mate? I hope you're well. Ings should have started, and Somerville should have stayed on. He was our only bright spark. If we're going to score, it was going to come from him. Totally agree. Totally agree. I actually do now want to see. I'm not being an advocate for Danny Ings. I've got to be honest. I've said I think we need better strikers than Antonio and Ings. But at this moment in time, given that they're the only 2 options, there is a third option, but not many of you want it, which is to put Bone back up front. But that will be only when Kudus comes back from his ban. But given that we've only got 2 options at this moment in time, why not give Danny Ings a chance and see if if the landscape is any different with him up front starting. Time to get Ruud van Nistelrooy. He left Man United today. Won't have compensation right up Sullivan Street. Yes, I heard that. Really, really surprised at Amorim that he didn't keep Van Nistelrooy, a legend. Someone who must be a fantastic foil for the rear guard at West Ham. At Man United. I'm really surprised Amorim didn't keep him on, but. Is he experienced enough? I know he's got footballing. He's played in the Premier League, but is he, as a manager, would that be up Sullivan Street? I don't know. It'd be interesting. Young, he said he loved the short time he managed. And where else did he manage? Was it Ajax? I could be wrong. Or was it Rotterdam? I can't remember. Someone will tell me in the chat. And Joe, you're saying the same thing. Would he be worth a shout? I don't know. Interesting, though. Gennaro, good evening, mate. I hope you're well too. If Sully is true to his form, it will either be Potter, Rafa, or Southgate. I'll make you right, to be honest with you. Mind you, Southgate, he doesn't have Premier League managerial experience. Does he? Christ, I don't know. I don't want Potter. I've made my feelings clear about Potter. I think Rafa, it's way past his, sell-by date, to be quite honest with you. I think we'd make a mistake if it was Potter, to be honest with you. I could be wrong. I'd like to be proved wrong, but I don't think it'd be Potter. Paul, but then I'm not Sullivan. Paul, don't need any of these managers. They have failed previously in the Premier League. Charles, good evening to you. Sully does the hiring. Buck stops with him. It's interesting because I did ask the question at the weekend, who exactly does Lopetegui report to? Because I remember that when when Moyes left and Steidten did his interview, he talked about, how happy he was about, now being in charge of the direction of the football. And in most other clubs, certainly abroad, I don't know about in England, but certainly abroad, coaches report to the technical director. Who else have we got here? John, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Finn, good evening to you. I hope you're well. Avram was spotted at Bethnal Green Cafe. There you go. You heard it here first. Avram coming back. Ray, good evening, mate. I hope you're well too. Robin Irons, good evening, mate. Only Southampton look worse than us. All the other teams around the bottom have togetherness, fight, and game plan. Lopetegui is clueless and language barriers shining through onto the field. Now, I guess I think results are what's separating us from the rest of the other teams. I don't disagree with you that other teams have got the togetherness, but they don't seem to be able to win a lot of games, which is why I think I hope I'm not wrong, but I don't think we will fall into a relegation trap. Obsidian, X says Lopetegui had a meeting with Brady and it went well. Shows that that was last week. That meeting happened, I think, on Wednesday or Thursday. Apparently, he came out smiling, etc., and everything was all right. But that was before the game. So things can change. Flemmer, as long as the little dildo is there, I lost hope and excitement. John, how are you, mate? I haven't seen you for a while. Mr. Stark, give us a Précy. You've missed absolutely nothing, to be honest. I did a thing about God, his name's gone. John. I did a thing on Steve Bacon at the start of the show. That's all you really missed, mate. Charles. Loppy has all the gear with no idea. He's certainly got. I thought we had a decent squad. Don't you? Or is it now there are gaps showing that maybe we didn't think there would be? I don't know. William, how are you, mate? Thank you for joining. Good evening to you, Billy Bob. Thank you for gently caressing that like button. Steve Irons, how are you, mate? When are we going to be put out of our misery? We're not. Finn, because even if we get another manager, something will be wrong. As pony as the manager is, in situations like this, you need your captain to be a real leader, and that's not Bone. I do feel sorry for Bone. I think he's in jeopardy of ruining his stature at West Ham United because he's been made captain. That's not his fault. Now, could Bowen turn around and say, "I'm sorry, Loppy, I don't want to be captain anymore"? What would that suggest about him as a character? Would you accept that? I don't know. It's a tough one. But yes, I mean, Bowen, he's been on record. He said, "I'm a quiet person. I'm not the sort of person that will shout and scream, etc., whether it be on the pitch or in the changing room." We are lacking a little bit of leadership. I don't know if I blame him. He didn't ask to become captain. I would virtually guarantee that. But he's the one that's getting the flack for it. He's the one that will get the stick. I feel sorry for him. Matt, thoughts on David Coote being suspended for his comment? I know. I heard that about an hour or so before I came on. What can you do? Idiot. There you go. More of an idiot is mate or whoever it was that recorded it. I put it out there. Fuck me. What sort of mate's that? Andrew, Southgate would be Sullivan's dream. Best England manager for a generation. One final semi-final ticket. All boxes for Sullivan. No, don't want. No, haven't seen GP. I don't know if anyone has. But if anyone has, please let Howard know. Mice Collective, how are you? I hope you're well. Ings seems to be more effective than Antonio, but he never starts. I'll make you right. I think Ings had a better game in the 10 or so minutes that he came on than Antonio. And I don't want Antonio bash because you know I'm capable of doing that for a whole hour. And I don't mean to do that. But Ings did have a better game. Rolly, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Let's scroll down. Osborne Grant, good evening, mate. Sullivan is ruining a good club. How can he not see what the fans can? It's unbelievable. Anthony, bottom three going down, Southampton, West Ham. I really don't think we will. I genuinely don't think we will. But I might, I could be wrong. Shenken, good evening, mates. Shenken, good evening. If Lopetegui doesn't know what the best 11 is, I would admit that at least he's given most of the squad a chance. Moyes didn't do that. And here's the irony. I agree with you. I think he's still working it out. But he's played almost every player available to him apart from West Foderingham. No, not almost. He has played every player available to him apart from West Foderingham so far. Even Andy Irving got 10 minutes in a game earlier in the season. Colin Stout, Lopetegui just needs to go now. It's just going to get worse. He has lost the dressing room. You can see the players just don't want to play for him. I see and feel we will struggle in the next 5. Pete, we changed managers. However, we're still playing the same old style of football or even worse. Dick, good evening, mate. We are so awful. Yeah. Nando, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. From Australia, nothing will change while Sullivan has control. And this is the thing that's confusing me, because if Sullivan has been interfering yet again, then perhaps that is where, the fault lies. Victor, play Kudus in central midfield would add some spark. I totally agree. I've been advocating that for quite some time. I think Kudus playing in the centre of the park will completely change the complexion of West Ham United. I really do. Somerville out on the left side, Bowen out on the right-hand side, Kudus in the middle, and see what happens then. Hammer, I think fans have seen enough of Lopetegui and what he can do. It's an awful situation we find ourselves in. Vinay, good evening, mate. A caretaker manager such as Potts, Noble, Brookin, or Devonshire would do better than Loppe and will get people excited. Noble doesn't want it. I doubt very much Brookin would ever want it again. Devonshire, good shout. Potts, yeah. Or at least, certainly, for Potts to come in with another coach who may, Van Nistelrooy, and bring Potts in, who knows the club. Maybe. James, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Why isn't 4-4-2 fashionable anymore? You tell me why. Is it Schenken? Why? I don't know. It'd be nice to see one or two teams trying that out, wouldn't it? Frog, oddly, we have the same win-draw-loss ratio of the past 6 games as Arsenal. Go figure. Huh? Don't make me look at the league chart. Oddly, we have the same win-draw-loss ratio over the past 6 games as Arsenal. Oh, interesting. Osborne, a new manager would have to hit the ground running after the international break. If they do, sack Lopetegui, but I don't think that will happen. Bet he's relying on Kudus on his return, but might be too late. Well, Kudus we know now, he won't be returning until the Leicester game. He was given an extended ban on his 3-match ban, and now he is out for the next 2 games. Could have been worse. They could have given, apparently, someone on the effing board wanted to give him a 6-game ban. Spurs fan, clearly. But apparently he's only got an extra 2-game ban, which I think we should count ourselves lucky. Early doors. Stel, if Sullivan took a gamble with this idiot taking on Van Nistelrooy, only could be the best gamble he's ever taken. Okay, I'm gonna ask you guys. Okay, I don't mean it facetiously or anything like that. Let's say, for argument's sake, Sullivan went, all right, then let's go and get Van Nistelrooy, and let's say Van Nistelrooy absolutely screwed it up. Whose fault would that be then? Because we're shouting. I mean, we as fans are going, get him, get Potter, get Van Nistelrooy, get so and so, get Schmidt, get Conceição. I mean, the list is endless. Let's say, for argument's sake, Sullivan listens to us, which he won't, and he gets a manager in that we all want. And what if it goes wrong? You know, what then? Chris finally escaped to Paphos on Wednesday. I hate you. Gerispo, can't even pronounce. It's bloody Greek. Geroskipu versus ASPIS. Who's ASPIS? On Saturday, Cypriot Division 3. That's dedication, Chris. Relief from that crud I travelled from Yorkshire for last week. I hope you enjoy it. What is it? It's only about 22, 23 degrees out there at the moment. Take your jacket, mate, won't you? Take a cardi. Sharky, Barrow Southgate was in charge of them. Were they in the Premier League when he was with them? I forget. I don't think I forgot. I just don't think I cared. Michael, Van Nistelrooy is available now. He has a Premier League experience. Rowley, I was definitely Moyes out, and I still believe it was time for him for a change. To me, though, looks like Kloppy has lost the dressing room, and I don't think Moyes ever did. Interesting that. Yeah, I don't think Moyes ever did. He managed PSV. Oh, there you go. I got that completely wrong. Thank you for that, Pete. Anthony, still, do you know where our win is coming from? Won't win a game before Christmas. I'm placing my bet on Leicester and a shock against Arsenal, but then I am the eternal optimist. Graham, what about the ref ban for bad-mouthing Liverpool, but the refs have no agenda? That explains ref attitudes towards our club. Agree. Yeah. I'm tough shit to him, really. He's ruined his career. James, bit of a wild shout, but any news on potentially Allegri? Absolutely zero. None. Massimiliano Allegri from Juventus? No. And anyway, and if you like that, man, look, Italian football, I know he's a winner. I don't know how many leagues he won with Juve and all that sort of stuff. But if you don't like boring football, have you watched Italian football? It's all about defending. Italian football is all about defending. If you think we're turgid under Moyes and even more turgid under Lopetegui, I guess maybe we might win a trophy under someone who plays defensive football. Can't think who that might have been, but Allegri, no, it will never happen. Pierino, I know he's left though, isn't he? He's left, or he's not working at the moment. Pierino, Sully will never let it go. He's a control freak. How funny if Steidten thought he was in charge. Good point. How funny would it be? Hammerit, it's absolutely pointless to pay to update a squad and yet not invest in a decent coach. How many of us, in all honesty, let's be really honest, because I know I was a little bit interested when it was announced, but how many of you really thought Lopetegui would be this bad? I certainly didn't. And I'll be honest, I really did not. And I know people were going, oh, he's the Spanish Moyes, etc. And I did my research about him. I looked at, primarily, and in all honesty, hands up, when I was doing the research, I was looking primarily at Seville and looking and seeing what he did there. You know, with Monchi as his technical director, he is a new manager. They came in, and between them, I've said this all before, between them, they got rid of 20 players. They brought in something like 17. They completely changed the whole team around. And in that first season, they finished 4th in the Spanish league and they won the Europa League. You know, and when you're looking at that and you're going, that's not fucking bad. You know, that isn't bad by, you know, for anyone to have done that. You know, and to become 4th in the Spanish league, I mean, all right, there's, you know, Spanish league is quite a competitive league. And I was looking at that and thinking, well, maybe we've got a coup here, you know, and he was playing good football. He was playing pretty attractive football. You know, he had a solid base, etc. I thought that was the Lopetegui we were going to get. And then when I looked at Wolves, then when we looked at Wolves, who were bottom of the league when he came in, and he dragged them by the scruff of the neck and took them up to, they finished above us that season. When he took over Wolves. And I thought, okay, well, he can do it in the Premier League as well, and he had some exciting players there too. And that's what I thought we were going to get, in all honesty. That's where I thought we were going with Lopetegui. I'm actually, and because now I question, and I've been doing this now for the last week or two, I'm now questioning, has he got the right squad in place in order to be successful, or is he just really that bad? And then I've got to ask myself, well, hang on a minute. Last season, we were playing not good football, but at least we were scoring. We were getting the best out of the likes of Kudus and the best out of the likes of Bowen. Bowen, got 16 league goals, matched Di Canio's record in the Premier League and all that sort of stuff, got 20 odd goals in total. And Kudus was doing really well, and so on and so forth. And even if we were conceding goals, we were actually scoring a lot of goals. So he's made those two players look worse. But then you've got to look at the game plan. Our game plan under Moyes was always, the counter-attack. We could never go forward. It was always, we were relying. We look better when we're counter-attacking. Lopetegui wants to play possession-style football. He wants to play possession-based football. Now I'm asking myself, so what is it? It's the chicken and the egg thing. He wants to play a different style. He wants to play possession-based football. Does he have the squad to do it? Does he have the right sort of players? I'm even asking whether players like Bowen and Kudus fit into that style. Does he have the sort of players at his disposal to play that different type of football? Clearly not. So what I want him to do then is go back to, I don't care now about possession. We've had the best possession so far this season than we have for the last 4 or 5 seasons so far. Our average possession now is 40, 45% per game, etc. Whereas last season it was 20, 25 or whatever the hell it was. So we've got a lot more of the ball, but we're doing absolutely nothing with it. So I would rather Lopetegui just go to a counter-attacking style and do that. Just don't try and take the game to other teams. We don't have that. You'll get the best out of Kudus. You get the best out of Bowen. You'll get the best out of Paqueta and everybody else if you play that counter-attacking style. We've got really good defenders, I keep being told. Kilman, fantastic. Todibo, I think he's going to be a Rolls Royce of a defender. And Wan-Bissaka, one of the best right-backs in the Premier League, we keep being told. Don't let them maraud forward and play the high line, etc. You don't have to play the low block. Play a mid-block, a bit like Nottingham Forest did, and then see what happens with West Ham and whether we can actually have a completely different approach to our game. That might save Lopetegui's job. Forget the possession base. I can give a stuff if we've got 5% possession or 50% possession. The important thing is what you do with the possession. When we were under Moyes, 20% possession, we were winning games, winning some of our games. Now we've got 40% and we're getting thrashed. So I want to see Lopetegui. What I want to see after the international break, if Lopetegui is still here, is a completely different approach. Play the counter-attack and see some of our players come alive. I guarantee you Bowen will. I guarantee you Kudus will, and various other players. Even if you keep Kudus out on the left, if you play counter-attacking, you've got a very different approach to our football. Avid. Poppy should have been reporting to Tim in a normal sporting director situation, but this is West Ham. Sully just can't let anything be run the way it should be. He picked the coach, not Tim. Ralph, guys, look at the Premier League table. There's a gap forming and going to be seriously bad after the next 2 games. Dexter, how far behind am I? Not bad, actually. Not bad. Dexter, the criteria for a coach having Premier League experience is clearly null and void. When you look at Arne Slot at the Scousers, I think Rude would be a decent left field shout for me. Should Loppy go? Interesting. Bonnie, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Tell me what you think of what I just said about, get Lopetegui. If Lopetegui wants to save his job, there's one easy way to do it. Change your game plan. Forget the possession-based rubbish. 5% possession, winning 1-0, or 50% possession, losing 3-0. I know what I'd go for. It'll be effing boring, but it'll start winning games. There's an in-between, isn't there? There's an in-between. Tell me what you think. Do you think he's capable of changing the way we play? Do you think he's capable of going to counter-attacking football rather than possession-based football? Because if we go back to a counter-attacking football, I think we'll start winning games pretty easily, to be honest with you. Dan, we have no midfield. We're still playing Antonio and Ings up front. Of course, we're crap. Good point. Paul, how many decent players have we lost because the manager doesn't like them? Well, interesting. This one, he's keeping them. Well, the ones he didn't like, got rid of at the beginning of the season. But the players there, he's playing them all. So it's the difference. I get what you're saying. Moyes didn't like players. He didn't use them. Snubbed them, etc. Lopetegui seems to be using everyone almost a bit too much. Ted. Still, I said last week, 150 million spent on the wrong players. We could have bought the best players, put off of the championship for less than that. Good point, and maybe played a different way. Keith, good evening. Kalispera to you, my friend. I hope you're well. Early doors. Has anyone seen Steve Cox? Haven't seen him for a while. Don't know. ZY, good evening, mate. When did the board have the meeting about Loppy's future? Going to be this week, apparently. But don't hold me to it. I did qualify when I put the show out yesterday that it wouldn't surprise me if they had a meeting. It would also not surprise me. I haven't had a meeting. It wouldn't surprise me if that meeting didn't result in talking about Lopetegui's future. It could go either way. Gennaro, Southgate managed Middlesbrough. He did manage in the Premier League. Thank you. I chuck a wild card into the mix. Roberto Mancini meets Sully criteria. Yeah, interesting. Rico, hello, mate. I hope you're well. Fair result. No one deserved 3 points. Allegri for next West Ham manager. No way, Allegri. Rico, thank you for joining, mate. It was turgid, wasn't it? I've got to be honest. I don't know which of the two sets of fans were happier. Everton, maybe. Were you happier with a 0-0? And I did ask. I don't know if I asked you or another Everton fan when they responded to one of my shows. Rico, would you take David Moyes back over Sean Dyche? Let me know. I'll try and look for your reply. Colin, Stel, I feel this perfect opportunity to stack Lopetegui now. Would you take De Zerbi? He's not happy at Marseille. No. I'll tell you why I wouldn't take a Brighton manager, and I've tried to explain this about Potter. Now, not that De Zerbi's a bad manager, don't get me wrong, but have a look at what happens at Brighton. Potter, De Zerbi, I can't remember who's there now, etc. Every time they change manager, coach, whatever you want to call them, they don't regress. They keep improving. They keep getting better. Why is that? They're a very, very well-run club, and they have a system. They have a mechanism in place with their scouting. They use all the metrics and all that sort of stuff we're meant to be using. I'm writing a script at the moment about our scouting. Remember that guy? We've got that data guru who's meant to find the best players through his data analytics. What's happened to that? Anyway, I regress. I digress. Anyway, Brighton, they've got a mechanism in place. They've got a system in place where all you got to do is plonk a coach in there and let him manage what's already there. Potter did really well under that system. And then De Zerbi did really well under that system and did slightly better than Potter did. And now their current guy, I can't remember his name, is not only doing well, he's doing even better than De Zerbi and Potter. They step by step, year on year, they get better. Out of that system, De Zerbi, and I know Potter went into a crap situation at Chelsea, but De Zerbi and Potter are not doing as well. That system, that infrastructure isn't there to support them. We don't have that sort of infrastructure at West Ham, so I think he'd fail. And I think Potter would fail as well. But tell me if you think I'm wrong. Ralph, Lopetegui hasn't played any youth still, as well as Fotheringham. Well, I'm not including youth, but you've got a good point there. And all the decent youth he's sent out on loan. That should have been a warning sign, shouldn't it? When we had George Earthy breaking through the club and then being sent out on loan. Potts, after we sold Flynn Downs to Southampton, I thought, okay, well then Freddie Potts is going to be in that midfield, or at least on the bench, and he let him go as well. What I mean is senior players. So yeah, you're right about the youth, but as well as Fotheringham, yeah. Michael, our discipline under Lopetegui shows the players don't understand or are fed up with his tactics. There is something definitely wrong. And I'm going to talk about the game later and about the attitude of some of the players that got substituted. Victor, I think it shows a pure lack of football intelligence from Sullivan and Brady to think that football we're playing is acceptable. Total incompetence on their part. They're not football people, are they? So long as the money keeps rolling in and so long as we're in the Premier League, that's all they care about. And that's why I thought Steidten came in, to do the footballing side of things and get that bit right. Clearly not. Andrew, Ings, Antonio, Soufal, Souček, Rodriguez, Mavropanos are nowhere near good enough. It's a travesty they're anywhere near our first 11. Rodriguez, hot and cold. Soufal, I don't mind him coming on as a sub every now and again. Ings and Antonio, I agree. Ings, I agree we should have got a striker. Souček, I don't mind Souček. I think Souček has been all right, actually. You know, I even said last week, I think so far he's probably been our best central midfielder. Mavropanos has also played pretty well, to be quite honest with you. But I get your point. You know, but these players, some of these players are good as squad players. Rico, Everton in bottom 3 after December fixtures. Oh, good luck to you, mate. Seriously. Hammerette, the team are playing like it's the end of the season, where we sit in the middle of the table with nothing to play for and nothing to lose. It's a good point. Dodsey, how are you, mate? I hope you're well. After 3 glorious years, I now have my West Ham back. Gonna be a while yet. Andrew, I hope you're well, Dodsey. Andrew, we will have the same board, same coach, same technique at the end of the season, and we will finish top half. Don't understand what all the fuss is about. Being a Hammer 56 years and seen far worse. I get you, Andrew, and I'm trying not to be, you know, one of those defeatists. You know me, half glass full rather than half glass empty. But even I am struggling at the moment to see what the improvement is. Ted. Now, ironically, I did say earlier in the season, I can see certain things that are improving. Possession is definitely one of them. We are actually having more chances. Think about it. I know it doesn't look like it, but we're actually having more chances. And I did say maybe it will take time. But every time we seem to take a step forward, we then sort of plateau and then take a step back. And then take a step forward, plateau, step back, which is the weird thing. Ted, Trigger from the Only Fools and Horses have got more sense than Loppy. Watching paint dry must be more fun than that clown. Feather, good evening to you. After the international break, you will see a revitalised side with a manager that brings exciting attacking style and a solid and cohesive defence. Wake up, Feather. Thank you, mate. No, I appreciate that. Philip, honestly, I don't think there is any chance he will be sacked before January. I'm kind of inclined to agree. I'm unhappy with the results like all of us, but maybe give him a half a dozen more games to turn it around. If I was seeing improvement on the pitch, I'd go yes. But like I just said, you know, better plateau back, you know, that's the thing that worries me at this moment in time. Vinay. To Daniela, caretaker manager for a few games until they find someone. Who do you mean? Which one? Kim Joe, good evening to you. I want the ex-Porto manager, Consul Sal. It is, isn't it? I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. Dan, some fans are asking for Steidten to pick a new coach, the qualified person. I'm writing a script about Steidten. You might not be happy with what I'm looking into. Devo, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Should have been knighted for slapping that Tottenham twats. Not a 5-game ban. Daniel, good evening, mate. Can't see 3 players moving with purpose going forwards or backwards on the pitch. No communication verbally or instinctively. What's going on? Coaching staff or players or a combination of both? Andrew, a resounding no from me on Van Nistelrooy. What are people thinking? Fair play. Who else have we got? Good evening to you, Matthew, sorry. It's all a bit Groundhog Day, isn't it? It feels that way, doesn't it? It really does. Anthos, hailstorms, loads of rain and tornadoes here in Cyprus. Christ. I bet it's still about 25 degrees, though. Wow, hailstones. Hailstorms, loads of rain, tornadoes. Good grief. Vinay, get an anonymous manager, bag over his head and pixelate during interviews. Steve, De Zerbi would be a shout. Maybe I'm wrong. Epic. Allegri had the best squad in Italy. He won't be that successful with what we've got. I think it's a massive long shot. Where has that come from? I've heard of all the other names, but where's Allegri come from? John, give RVN Van Nistelrooy a go. Why not? A lot better than Lopetegui. At least we can understand his press conference and post-match interviews. Yeah, we lost again. Well, that'd be all right then. No, I don't know what Van Nistelrooy would be like. I don't even know his record at PSV, to be quite honest with you. Obsidian, I doubt Lopetegui could even find the dressing room. Trudge, I'm hating on Wan-Bissaka this month. Fed up repeating myself about Paqueta. Why Wan-Bissaka? He did an interview, and he said, Lopetegui has told me to express myself, which is why I'm up the pitch more times than I'm back defending. So is he at fault for that? He's doing what the manager's asking him to do. Ultra. The only Italian manager I will take is Gasperini, Atalanta. Is he still there? As he's one of the only Italian managers that plays attacking football. Most Italian football is drab. It is drab. It is boring. Robert, don't understand the signing of Soler, Rodriguez, and Fulkrug. I'm beginning to be inclined to agree, to be honest with you. I am a little bit inclined to agree. They're just adding to the other slow players like Paqueta and Souček. Lopetegui's vision is speed and stamina, yet these are his options. So has he been given a tough hand? I'll ask that again. If Steidten is meant to be in charge of transfers, has he been given a tough hand? I think about what we had in midfield, and Ward-Prowse, I thought he was okay, but I genuinely thought that Soler was going to come in and show us what we've been missing from Ward-Prowse. Now I kind of think we should have kept Ward-Prowse. Rodriguez, I've already said, why not have kept Freddie Potts, and see what he would have been able to offer. Trudge. I would like Di Canio as manager. No, I would not. And would probably piss off the modern day player by having a go at them. Also a bit like Mourinho does. Di Canio is, fantastic footballer as we all know, but an absolute nut job as manager. Come on. It would be chaos. It would be it'd be interesting, but chaotic. Schenken. De Zerbi seems to be someone who doesn't stick around for too long for whatever reason. Good point. Vinay. I suspect Lopetegui was a lunatic, but in football it's sometimes an asset, but not in this case. Andrew. Mourinho would be disastrous, would think he's doing us a favour by coming to us, stay well clear. He'll come in, he'll spend a season and a half to 2 seasons, and then off he'll go again, which is very true. Mind you, he'd probably win us a trophy in the meantime. Anthos. I didn't want him at all, Stel. Wanted the Rush Green tea lady instead of Lopetegui. She's just been signed at Liverpool as backup coach. Michael, Coco the Clown is our next manager. He runs a circus. Knowing Sullivan, he will get Fat Frank. He definitely wouldn't get Fat Frank or Ince just to stick 2 fingers up. Even he wouldn't do that. Would he? Obsidian. I didn't want him because I thought he would be boring. I never expected him to. Let's scroll down. Ken, I must be mad. I'm going to Newcastle. I'll see you there, Ken. Always have a good time up there, but I can see us getting done like in 2011 when we made Leon look like prime Ronaldo and he got a treble. One going up there on the Monday, coming back on the Tuesday, and you just I already know it's going to be a mistake. I already know it is. But hey, stranger things have happened, haven't they? David, do one Sully, sell up to Tim. Sell up to Tim, step down and give us hope. That ain't going to happen. Okay, get us a real manager. Steve, I looked in the mirror Saturday night and saw a fat, sad old man feeling down. I said to the wife, I need a compliment. She replied, your eyesight is... Pete, still, he did well at Sevilla and made them a winning team, but he has inherited a moist squad primarily, but it's a long job by the look of it. Has he primarily... 9 new players in? I don't know. He's got, I think the ones he had left, to be honest with you, are the players that are pretty much half decent players. I don't know. And I'm asking again, has he been dealt a tough hand? Has Steidten not done his job properly? Vonnie, I never thought at the start of the season that Loppy would be this bad. Maybe pre-season was a warning. Ray, I saw Steve Bacon's pictorial book a few years ago in Sports Pages on Charing Cross Road. I didn't buy it at the time, but it looked gorgeous. It was horizontal rather than vertical. I'd love a copy. If I had a copy, I'd send you it, but I don't have one of those either. Darren, you should go back to that shop, mate, and see if they still got it. It's not just Lopetegui. There are many players who are under par this season. I agree with that. Gennaro. Van Nistelrooy is too much of a risk, and Sullivan would throw it in our faces if things went sour. There's no chance of him coming, but I love De Zerbi as manager, similar style to Slot. Have I got De Zerbi wrong then? He's not just a one-hit wonder at Brighton. Michael, I think Steidten was recruiting for Amorim. Then Sully said no, too expensive, hence the mishmash of signings. I don't really know, to be honest with you, with the greatest of respect, Michael, whether that's true or not. Because I said, I can't remember when it was, whether it was last week's show or the week before, that Steidten was fully involved in Lopetegui coming to West Ham. David, no point in possession-based football when you don't know what to do with it. Spot on. Rowley, I agree. Re-expectations for Lopetegui, such a disappointment. Charles, the players need to take a look at themselves. It's like they don't give a damn. Anthos, whatever happened to the clinical strikers like McAvenny, Cotty, Defoe, we once possessed. Long time ago. Colin, still, I have to admit, never thought it would be this bad, but I have never, ever wanted him. And like I said, I made my mind up that it wasn't working. That's why it's a perfect opportunity to get rid of now. I just don't know if they're going to do it. I really don't. I've always said possession is a useless stat. Totally agree with you. But we wanted it, though, Trini. A lot of fans said, we don't have enough of the ball. We keep being on the back foot and all that. Yeah, but I don't care if we're winning. It's exactly what you said. It's what you do with it. The stat is a bit of a fraud, really. Andrew, I think Thomas Frank could be a good appointment if he was available. Yes, I do. Schenken, it's about a point a game, so just keep trying. The most important thing for fans at the stadium is to entertain. Absolutely. Early doors. Still, Lopetegui had the opportunity in the last international break after the Ipswich win. Look how that turned out. Agreed. Frog. Sully will only take a yes man, so nothing will change whilst he has the reins. DA, good evening, mate. Counter-attack is not defensive football and creates more goals than pointless possession. I agree. Well, the way Moyes did it, it was low block. It was defensive. Try hit them on the break. And I'm not suggesting doing that, but we can do, here we go, Trini, mid-block with the pace we have at the back now, press, turnover, and counter-attack. That's what I think. Barnsley, good evening to you. Seems that since Sullivan has been in charge, we have been a shambles and a bit of an embarrassment, really. Can't see our circus getting any better until he sells up. It's going to be a long time coming. Richard Davis, good evening, mate. Sullivan's plan is to stay out of the relegation zone. Don't disagree. All he is bothered is about taking the TV money. He didn't pay Moyes off, and he ain't going to pay Loppy off unless we look like we're going to be relegated. Steve, my wife dressed up as a policewoman last night, told me she was arresting me for being good in bed. 2 minutes later, she dropped charges. I see you're keeping yourself amused. Brownie, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. As an outsider looking in, I get the hate you guys have with Sullivan, but this Steidten seems to be an untrustworthy individual who has loose lips. He does indeed. And I am really beginning to question Tim Steidten. And I want to finish that script. I mean, it's good that we've got an international break next week because I can spend a bit of time in putting the show together. I'm just trying to do a deep dive on Tim Steidten and whether he is the messiah that we all thought he was going to be. Ted, Newcastle and Arsenal must be thinking what time is kickoff and rubbing their hands together. Yeah, let's hope we give them a shock. Delton. Still, I believe the coaching is negative because 3 touches instead of 2 and 2 instead of 1. Kilman needs to take charge at the back and encourage passing forward instead of sideways. Good shout. We do take too many touches on the ball. Good evening, Gary. I hope you're well, mate. Good evening to you, Lee. How are you, mate? I hope you're both well. Trini, Brighton are run on analytics and data. The manager coach has to fit their system, not the other way around. Spot on. And this is why I keep asking myself, will the likes of Potter or De Zerbi do well at West Ham? I don't know. I really don't know because we don't have that mechanism in place. Thank you for that, Trini. Rico, if Moyes can get West Ham in Europe, he can with Everton if fully back in market. So you'd have him back? Vonnie, if Kudus has played, I'd like to think we would have won the game. He's let us down big time. If Kudus had played, quite possibly we might have nicked a goal. Yeah, I would go with that. Humble Thomas, good evening to you. This coach is very good, but he doesn't know how to arrange players. If he doesn't change, you have to change him. If he doesn't change you, you have to change him. Yeah, good shout. Will he change, though? I don't know. Andrew, Sullivan is too old and set in his ways to change now. He will never allow a football director to be in full control, no matter who it is. Daniela, the manager, needs to improve, but the players are half to blame for this. Russ, good evening to you, mate. Thank you for joining. Good evening to you, City Solar. Not beating Newcastle or Arsenal, so what's the point? We don't know that, do we, though? Sean, good evening, mate. Thank you for joining. I hope you're well. West Ham, great. again. Did the senior source cancel more than just a podcast and manage to fall out from Saturday? Brady out. Who's behind that? Come on, reveal yourself. Did the senior source cancel more than just a podcast? I didn't know it was cancelled. Was it cancelled? Was it cancelled? Could have got Nigel on as a guest. Colin, stalemate. If we do want to change for a new coach, and if Steidten in charge of finding the coach, I wonder whether we'll go after the coach that he went to look at in Brazil. What coach did he look at in Brazil who had success in Portugal? You're going to have to give me his name because I don't know. I didn't know he saw a coach in Brazil. That's a new one to me. Tell me the name, mate. Sorry, let's scroll down. Tease Retro, good evening to you. Took my son to the Everton game for my birthday. Jesus, what a load of crap. I've seen better under 10 squads. Daniel, our problem is Emerson is more forward than Somerville, and Wan-Bissaka, Mr. Jogger, wants to be a centre forward who's bone-eyed or lazy at defending, even when he loses the ball, disgraceful. The interesting thing is that Lopetegui plays that style of football. He pushes his fullbacks far forward. He tells them to go way forward. And that's why they're completely caught out of possession. And my thinking is, forget that. Do the mid-block, as Trini said. Do the mid-block, defend first, and then let the midfielders and the strikers do the work up front. Pirino. Thing is, Sullivan never pays compensation in year one, so we get him until the end of the season. Could we go down if we keep him until the end of the season? It's possible. HV. This could take going back to a 4-2-3-1 defense-heavy format and be progressive in play, using certain players' capabilities and stabilize us. You can defend and score goals without doing Moyes ball nonsense. And that's the mid-block, isn't it, HV? Rather than the low block, you go for the mid-block and then use that system 4-2-3-1 to your advantage. Absolutely. Feather, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you, mate. Gennaro. I would begrudgingly refer to the counter-attacking football if we started winning. However, it wouldn't be necessary if Sully hadn't screwed up by appointing Lopetegui. So you putting it square on Sullivan. Anyone want to blame Steidten, or am I being unfair? I will give Will still a chance. Not me, Craig. Young, hungry, can speak many languages, also hammer. Why not? I just don't know. Apparently, I said last week he didn't do that well in the French league, and someone told me he was doing quite well this season. Is he at Lyon? He's doing quite well. Paul, good morning to you, mate, from Melbourne. Watched the women's team beating Leicester 1-0. They played with passion and grit. Whilst the results haven't been good recently, can see what they're trying to do. How far behind am I? Right, I'm going to stop there because I'm going to go. Now that you just mentioned the women's team, let's talk about one or two other things that have come up this week, shall we? As you quite rightly said, the women's team, after they won their first goal of the season at the weekend, finally getting their first win in the Women's Premier League, beating Leicester 1-0. It looked like the two sides were going into the first half with a goalless draw. Manuela Pai brilliantly unlocked the Leicester defence with her trickery before threading the ball to Asai, who showed superb calmness to round the Leicester keeper to slot the ball home into an empty net. West Ham went on to continue to dominate the game and perhaps should have gotten a few more goals, but a win was most welcome. That win has now put West Ham women's team in 9th in the league, but still too close to the bottom, only 2 points separating them and Everton at the bottom of the league. What about the academy? Well, after last week's 8-goal thriller, where the under-18s let slip a 4-0 lead, people, in the Premier League Cup, West Ham gave away a 4-0 lead to get to 4-4. This week, we smashed top of the league under-18 Premier League leaders, Aston Villa 3-1. Elisha Sawumni netted a hat-trick, and he's now got 11 goals in all competitions this season. The under-18s didn't have a great start to the season, but now they're getting their rhythm back, slowly climbing up the table. They're now 6th place in the league. There's a lot of mileage to make up for them to get anywhere near Aston Villa, who've got 22 points, but we're only 3 points away from second-placed Fulham. The under-21s didn't have just as good a week when they faced Braintree Town away in the National League Cup, another competition in which our academy players get to face professional opposition. Despite starting really well with Josh Ajala, he got his goal on the night on 9 minutes. We couldn't hold on the lead with Braintree equalising 10 minutes later. However, we held our nerve. Ollie Scarles, who was on the bench at the weekend for the Everton game, took his goal on the 37th minute. But in the second half, Braintree's bruisers, and if anyone watched that game, you'd see the size of some of these tanks that were out there, completely out-muscled the under-21s, and they got 3 goals. They beat us 4-2 in the end. Some loan news, because we've got some interesting players out on loan at the moment. In the middle of last week, there you go. In the middle of last week, academy player George Earthy made his first start for Bristol City, who suffered a heartbreaking 2-1 home defeat in the Championship at the hands of promotion contenders Sheffield United. Earthy played 80 minutes in the game, in which Bristol City took the lead from the penalty spot. And from what seemed to be a winning position, Earthy was then subbed, and then Bristol City went on to lose 2-1. It's not because just Earthy was subbed, but, such a shame. He was on the pitch when we were winning, off the pitch when we lost. Freddie Potts was also in action during the midweek in his 9th start for Portsmouth, who were narrowly beaten by Plymouth Argyle 1-0. Despite dominating large parts of the match, the South Coast side were unable to convert their chances, leaving them at that time at the foot of the Championship table. On a brighter note, the academy loanee keeper, Mason Terry, secured his 6th clean sheet of the season for Hornchurch in their 1-0 win over Hemel Hempstead in the National League South. Then at the weekend, more loanee players were in action. Over in Spain, Naifa Gerd was instrumental in Real Sociedad's historic 1-0 win over league leaders Barcelona. Back home, James Ward-Prowse was a late sub for Nottingham Forest. He came off the bench on the 88th minute when they lost 3-1 to Newcastle. Back in the Championship, Freddie Potts, out again, played 78 minutes for Portsmouth, who moved off the foot of the table with their first home win of the season. Potts delivered another solid performance in midfield, setting up a number of chances from set pieces, which resulted in a 3-1 win over Preston North End. If only we had him at the club. Too early for that one. Injury-ridden Bristol City condemned Norwich City to their first home defeat in over a year. George Earthy played again in just over an hour as a right wing back this time round, filling in well for defensive injuries that Bristol have. By the time the Youth England international was replaced, his side had already built a 2-goal lead. Earthy was praised for his playing in a role that was unfamiliar to him, and both his and Potts' developments seem to be going really well. In League One, another academy player who's doing reasonably well is Callum Marshall, who played the first half as Huddersfield came from behind to earn a point at Crawley. Michael Forbes made his first league appearance in over a month, coming on as a sub. He's our central defender in the academy, as Bristol Rovers played out a 1-1 draw against Lincoln City. And in League Two, Patrick Kelly made his 6th League Two appearance for Doncaster Rovers as they held fellow promotion hopefuls Notts County to a 1-1 draw. And again, in non-league football, or Nation League South, Mason Terry's Hornchurch this time suffered a 1-0 defeat at the hands of Maidstone. Breathe. I'm going to get back to your comments in a minute. Right, 320 people watching. If it's the first time you're on this channel and you haven't yet become a subscriber, please do subscribe. If you can't be bothered to do that, then at least hit the like button, which will really help the channel. So please do that at least. Right, last part of the show, I'm going to talk about the Everton game all too briefly, and also going to go back on what's happening with Lopetegui. And I know what you all want, but I wonder if it's really going to happen or not. Right, back in 1 second. Right, so match review. Is there much to review? First of all, let's do the serious bit. Fans were meticulous in honouring the war heroes before kickoff. It's always a sombering moment to remember that there are far, far more important things than football in life to worry about. So well done to both sets of fans for following that. Right, so after last week's disastrous game against Nottingham Forest, we hosted Everton at the London Stadium in the hope that we'd get into the next international break with something to smile about. Well, as I've said earlier, as predicted, it was turgid, insipid, lackluster, a performance to forget from two teams that are in the middle to the bottom half of the table who are kind of suffering very similar fates. I have a number of Everton fans have responded to some of the videos I've put out, left comments, etc., that I uploaded over the past day or so. They don't seem to like their own as much either. They certainly don't. They're certainly not at all happy with the style of football being presented to them by Sean Dyche. And on the whole, Everton have been, they've been one of the bigger clubs in the history of English football, haven't they? And they're seeing their fortunes sort of on a downward path for probably a lot longer than they would have liked. This game was labelled a must-win game for both managers, head coaches, whatever you want to call them. So I should have guessed it should have had 0-0 written all over it. Now, the lineup, it kind of picks itself at the moment with the suspensions and the injuries that we have. So I kind of wasn't really surprised very much at the lineup. We had a scare with Todibo and Bowen, but they both made it through. We reverted to a back four rather than a back three, which I don't know. I actually said, and I admit it, I said against Nottingham Forest, we've gone to a back three. It might suit our style of play. And how wrong was I? So a back four, yeah, good. Wan-Bissaka on the right, Todibo, Kilman, Emerson, Rodriguez, Souček, Paqueta, and Somerville in the middle, with Bowen and Antonio up front. Or what was it? A 4-5-1, wasn't it? Give or take. So I wasn't really surprised at the lineup. It kind of picks itself at this moment in time. It was poor for a Premier League football match. For the world to see, it was one of the worst games that I can remember for a long time. Very few chances were created. I guess, the one chance that we had was the one that Somerville got in the second half. He was the bright spark in this game. He was probably my player of the match. Let's not forget, not only did he run through on a Paqueta pass to almost score, hit the post, in the first half, he also showed his prowess by running almost the whole length of the pitch to deny Everton a goal-scoring chance as well. If there's any other player that I thought was half decent, Danny Ings. He had some of his best chances when he came on for the last 10 minutes, or best chances for the team when he came on in the last 10 minutes of the game. And I do ask myself, as I've said earlier on, should we maybe consider now trying Danny Ings up front? In the style of football given that we're trying to pass the ball into the net rather than going sort of like, route one, then maybe Danny Ings might suit that style better. He hasn't got a lot of pace, but he's a clever striker in terms of he knows where to move. He knows the kind of movements that a striker needs to make. And Antonio has been a great servant to West Ham, but he's not a striker. He never has been a striker. I think the worst thing that we ever did was to give Antonio the number 9 shirt. Now, ironically, here's some credit that you wouldn't expect. When Paqueta was dropped deeper, I think when Soler came on, Paqueta played a slightly deeper role. All of a sudden, he got better. He became a playmaker. He started threading the ball through. And this time, apart from the odd idiotic pass and the flicks that don't come off every now and again, more often than not, he had some pretty good passes in him. He threaded the ball through to Ings a couple of times. He threaded the ball through to Somerville to get on the end of. So he kind of he seemed to play better a bit deeper, and maybe that's where we need to put Paqueta. But there is a catch, as we already know, because if you put Paqueta at the back or sort of further back in midfield, he's prone to losing the ball in much more dangerous areas. When he loses the ball up front, you get pissed off, but he's lost it. And strictly speaking, nothing should come of that. But if he loses the ball deeper in his own half, that's when it can become problematic. But ironically, he had a bit of a better game when he dropped a bit deeper. Anyway, we've talked about this to death, haven't we? In terms of what's happening and what's going on. A lot of you want him to go. Now, I asked you guys the question earlier on. I don't think many people have answered, but I asked the question earlier. Has Lopetegui been dealt a bad hand? Has Lopetegui come in and been getting, some trying to put a positive spin on it, saying it takes time. He's inherited a Moyes team and stuff like that. I get that, but I would argue, as I said earlier, he's inherited some of the best players that Moyes had rather than some of the worst players. And it does take time to gel, to get them to change it to a different style of football. Bowen, Kudus, and other players have become acclimatized to playing the counter-attacking, as I said earlier on. Lopetegui has got players that are still in that mindset. But then of the 9 players that are coming, all right, forget Foderingham, but of the other players that have come in, has Lopetegui had a say in who is coming to West Ham United? And I've got to ask myself, who is responsible for having signed some of these players? Because now, after the summer window shut, we start hearing different things. We start hearing that we already know that Kilman was definitely a Lopetegui signing. There's no doubt. From Wolves' time, he wanted him to come to West Ham. So we understand that. And then we hear, conflicting stories about who brought Soler in, who brought Rodriguez in, who did this, who did that. Apparently now apparently now Sullivan is the one that pushed to sign Somerville. And ironically, Somerville's one of the better players that we've signed. So has Lopetegui been given the tools to do the job that he wants to do? He's got one of two choices that I see. Either he starts playing the players that can fit his system, or he changes the system. And changing the system is what I said earlier on about maybe going, I'm not talking about a low block, but going for a mid-block type football game and then playing on the counter-attack. But questions now, I'm asking questions, and I asked it earlier on about Steidten and what is his role at West Ham United, and what is his role when it comes to Julen Lopetegui, as people have pointed out that I mentioned earlier. In Europe, on the continent, when you've got a technical director, a sporting director, the manager, or the coach, should I say, the head coach, reports to that sporting or technical director. Why is that not happening at West Ham United? Is that because Sullivan can't keep his fingers out of the pie? That's probably the case. When I asked the question at the weekend, by the way, who manages Lopetegui, shouldn't it have been Steidten? The reply I got was 50-50. And I went, what do you mean? It's a shared role. Let me go into if I've still got it. 50-50, it's a shared role. Hang on a dual, here it is. Wasn't Steidten meant to come into the club to manage the new head coach? Yes-ish. Dual reporting lines. So does Steidten have a say in Lopetegui's future? Most likely. Or given that Steidten is now being looked at for his efforts, is he ever likely to have any say? Innocent and proven guilty. You make of that what you will. That's another show. So I asked the question: Who does Lopetegui report into? And apparently, he partly reports into Tim Steidten. So if he partly reports into Tim Steidten, then surely Tim Steidten's got a say as to whether Julen Lopetegui stays or goes. So if this meeting is going to happen this week, I would fully expect Tim Steidten to turn around and have his say. If he doesn't think that Lopetegui's the right man for the job now, it's Steidten's responsibility to turn around and say, we need to get rid of him. Because if he doesn't, now you can take it in one of two ways. He either doesn't have as much control as maybe he thought, or Sullivan is just not listening to anybody. I don't know. I am asking questions about Steidten and what he's responsible for. It's going to be interesting to see how this all pans out. But what do you think? What do you think? Should Steidten have the final say over Lopetegui? And if so, should it be Steidten that's sacking Lopetegui and not Sullivan? Oh man, the league position isn't good, but we're not loads behind. But I've seen nothing to think he's got a clue, and his experimenting, which is bad. Paqueta is a non-starter. We're playing with 10. Trini, we have a delusional fan base these days. The limited success Moyes brought us was not built on possession football. It wasn't built on possession football. I totally agree. Ted, don't get how we've gone from attacking football in some games last year to not being able to string 5 or 10 passes together this year. The answer is what Trini's just said. We weren't an attacking team. We were a counter-attacking team. And if you look at the stats, we rarely had 25, 30% possession in some games, but what we did was we made the most of it. We looked great when we went attacking because it meant that we just, it was the counter attack, caught them by surprise, etc. And it got us into good positions. Hammer it. Like we can't judge players who don't get a chance in their better positions. Steidten can't be judged unless he has full control. Tell me, does he have full control or not? It seems that a lot of you don't think he does. Shaky. Hate all this stats assist crap. And don't get me started on squad numbers. Miserable git that I am. I saw something that Schenken. What really qualifies Steidten for anything? You tell me. I'm asking the question. Sharky, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Jerry, football is a results business, but we mustn't forget it's also an entertainment business. I would rather have not been there on Saturday. I was bored witless. So was I. We all were. But the drinking was good afterwards. George, good evening. Thank you very much, mate. Much appreciated. N5 Hammer, good evening to you. It's Dom. Hello, Dom. I hope you're well, mate. You're never late. You never have to turn up on time for me. I never turn up on time for me. So don't worry. Thanks for joining, mate. David Moyes, left Pollock. Stell, I'm very well. Do we know who the new manager could be? I'm hearing whispers of the old Juventus. I don't know where. Can someone please tell me where the whispers of Allegri has come from? Because I've not heard of it until now. Michael, we have one of the best right-back defenders in the league, but I see him on the left, up front, central, etc. Wan-Bissaka needs to defend. Well, he needs to be told by the manager, by the coach, stay back. The coach is telling him, go and express yourself. Get up there, mate. No wonder we're left wide open at the back. That's why I suggested last week, if that's what we want to do, if we want to play that sort of marauding wing-back system, then have 3 at the back to try and make it a little bit better. But then we go and lose a player in the first half. Alex, if we didn't have Tim Steidten, would we? I'm playing devil's advocate. Would we? Seriously, would we? Evening to you, Mr. A. I hope you're well. Avram Grant's slipper. There you go. His slipper's here. Sack him or start boycotting games. That'll pinch Sullivan and embarrass him to do something. The problem with that is most of the season tickets are already paid up. They're going to get the money whether we turn up or not. That's the unfortunate thing. Mind you, they'll then start. Who's the Palmeiras? I don't know the name of the Palmeiras manager. I didn't think he went for a Palmeiras. He went for Palmeiras players. It's the first I'm hearing about Palmeiras manager. Ted the Hammer. And how could that possibly be when Sullivan wants someone that's Premier League proven? So I'm not sure there's much in that, to be honest. Ted, as Happy went to get some rebels, I'm having a whisper. All right for you lot, eating while you're watching. Hammer it. I'd like to think that being a director of football since 2015 is plenty enough to be qualified at his job. You might get a few surprises when I finish putting the script together for the show. GJ, I was very uneasy when the fans were saying top 6, top 4. I knew we were going to struggle. I don't really care about football this season. I just don't care. You do. We all do. That's the problem. David, evening to you, mate. When Everton had the ball in defence, we were in our own half, apart from Antonio. We bloody well were. And it was awful. It was awful to watch. The reason Steidten got Guilherme was one of the players for Amorim, earmarked and wanted to sure he was going to be at our club until Sullivan pulled the plug. People told me. I've heard that too. I still maintain that I want to know what Steidten's role is in all this. Because if Steidten really didn't want Lopetegui, and after what I've been told about having dual responsibility between Sullivan and Steidten, does that mean then that Sullivan has taken no notice even of Steidten? Why would he have brought Steidten to the club in the first place? I mean, for the first time in years, we thought, thank goodness he's doing something right. He's changing the whole complexion of the club. He's bringing in a head coach. He's allowing a head coach to come in. This is Sullivan. And he's allowing a technical director in. And I thought, well, here we go. Has he pulled the plug on all that then? I don't understand it. That's why I'm trying to get my head around it. Why do it? Let's go back one. Let's go back a step. I'm sure you've all seen or heard of the show that David Moyes was on with Gary Neville on YouTube, and Moyes said, "I was offered a new contract back in December when we beat Arsenal away, etc." And then that contract was taken off the table. So you all know. So the contract that was offered, even though it wasn't to David Moyes' liking, meant that the board wanted to keep David Moyes. That's what they wanted. Now, the difference is that the contract clearly made it really clear that David Moyes was no longer going to have responsibility for transfers. That was clearly going to go to Tim Steidten. That David Moyes was going to lose some power if he stayed at West Ham United. So think of the logic for 1 minute. So Sullivan has bought into having a technical director at the club. So much so that the manager that he wanted to keep, he pissed off because he offered him a new contract, which wasn't going to give him the same status as the previous one that David Moyes had. So it was evident from that Sullivan had bought into the Tim Steidten plan, the technical director plan, about the technical director going out there, getting the players in, etc., and the manager or the coach or whatever you want to call him, just coaching those players. Sullivan had bought into that. He clearly did, because if he wanted Moyes to stay, he wouldn't have got Tim Steidten in, and he wouldn't have given him a diluted contract. He would have just said, "Oh, sod it, mate. We want you here." And what's the name? The Dame also said the same, Baroness or whatever she is. She also said the same. We want David Moyes wanting to stay. They both said that quite clearly for quite some time, right up until the end of last calendar year. The board wanted David Moyes to stay, but then Steidten sold him the plan. This is what you should do. Technical director in, etc., and Sullivan bought into that. He bought into that. Enough so to offer David Moyes a contract that pissed David Moyes off. So given that Sullivan wanted Moyes, he could have done the easy thing and it just would have said, same old, which would have then pissed off Tim Steidten. But Sullivan sided with Steidten. So then why now is Steidten not taking any responsibility for having Lopetegui at the club? I don't buy into this Amorim thing, that it was Steidten that wanted Amorim and everyone else and Sullivan wanted Lopetegui. I think Steidten was tasked with bringing names to the table who could potentially become the future head coach of West Ham United. Amorim was one, Lopetegui was one, and I'm sure there were one or two others as well. If Steidten didn't want him, he wouldn't have put him on the list. There's no way that Sullivan would have gone out there and found or approached Lopetegui on his own. That's why I'm asking questions about Steidten. What's his role? What responsibility has he had? Why is he not taking any responsibility now that it's all going tits up? Because I can guarantee you one thing. If it was all going well, Tim Steidten would be the first one to go, brilliant, look what I've done here. You tell me. Am I completely barking? Am I completely up the wrong tree? Tell me. You tell me. Schenken, director of football is such a dubious job. You win, you get the credit. You lose and escape responsibility. There you go. Rupert, good evening, mate. How are you? Good to see you at the weekend. It's all about meeting good friends and having a laugh. Unless you're there, of course. Stuff the footy. How's your head? It wasn't good on Sunday. I struggled. But thank God I didn't have a drink. Otherwise, I would have struggled even more. Andrew, Fulkrug, Rodriguez, Guilherme, Todibo signings are looking like poor judgment from Steidten. He deserves the criticism he's receiving. Fulkrug, yes. Rodriguez, Guilherme, I want to see more of. Todibo, I like Todibo. I think Todibo's okay. Ralph, whilst talking about the women's team, Gary Lineker is finally leaving match of the day. Is he? I didn't know that. Avram. I wouldn't want Allegri. Good, strong manager, prestigious and inspirational. He's also free. I would want Allegri. Where can someone still hasn't told me with this? I've read all the other ones. Schmidt and Gonçalves and all the other ones that have been named. Allegri is the one that's come up tonight that I'm surprised by. Schenken. He has also scouted players for far longer. That is good enough for me. He will get some signings wrong, of course, but he needs full control to show us what he can do, in my opinion. Pirino. Daniela, but they played Inter Milan, Chelsea, Newcastle, who did. Answering a different question. Good evening to you, Stephen. I hope you're well, mate. Thank you for joining. Colin, Stell, Ferreira was the coach at Palmeiras, well regarded. Okay, I guarantee you it's the first time I'm hearing about that, because I know he was out there, and I know Steidten was out there looking at, I can't remember what the other player's name was, and then we ended up getting Guilherme, but it's the first time I'm hearing that he wanted a manager. And I repeat, given that Sullivan wants a criteria of that a manager having Premier League experience, it would have been a non-starter. Who else do we have here? Obsidian. I don't blame Steidten, because I honestly don't believe he wanted Lopetegui. He can't say that publicly, but there were rumours before the announcement, and Lopetegui doesn't fit the profile. This is on Sullivan. Good evening to you, Clive. I hope you're well, mate. Thank you for joining. Gennaro. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Steidten definitely has questions to answer, questionable signings. Ultimately, it's on Sullivan, as he appointed him along with Lopetegui. Who else have we got here? Ted. Funny how we send all our youth out to spend 18 million on Fulkrug. I'm disappointed. We should have kept one or two of our youth players. I am disappointed at that. I think Todibo Andrew looks a good player. But he's been quite poor in a few games, and I just think Guilherme was an expensive gamble. We couldn't afford to wait for two to come good. Here's the interesting thing: if everything else was absolutely fine, then Guilherme we almost wouldn't notice, would we? Quick swig of rum? No, mate. Quick swig of water. I need it. I can't drink rum on Monday. Can't do that. You're talking. We played Chelsea, Spurs, Man United. Talking about the games we played so far this season. Anthony, hello, mate. I hope you're well. You are well. Hope you are well. I am, mate. Was watching a different channel earlier on YouTube saying if Loppy is sacked, then they're lining up. Here we go again. I wish that. What channel is it? What's your take on this? Would you take him? I certainly would. Great manager. Fantastic manager, but I don't know where this has come from, so I can't, Allegri, one of the no is the answer, because I just don't think there's any truth in it, to be honest with you. Clive, the best player at the moment are Wan-Bissaka, Somerville and Kilman. All others need to wobble their own heads. Trini, I'm tired of saying this. Pac-Man plays deeper for Brazil, not a 10. And admittedly, Trini, he looked good when he did go back. The only trouble with that, as I've said, is if he starts far-arsing around, and we saw that when he first came to West Ham, pissing around with the ball just outside our 18-yard box, give the ball away, that's when it becomes dangerous. Andrew, when West Ham spend 25 million on the player, we haven't got the luxury of City or Chelsea for them to bet in. We need them to hit the ground running sooner rather than later. You mean Guilherme, and that's fair play. HV, when Ings came on, he had some good handling of the ball that was lively, worked well with who was out there. That's why I'm wondering whether the style of football we're playing, maybe it suits Ings more than it does Antonio. Bring Antonio on when we're chasing the game, or, half an hour to go, and let them batter their defence. Navadius, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Are we being harsh on Lopetegui? Moyes put standards here, and we expected all to see someone do better than Moyes. And now, when he's not doing that immediately, we already give up. That's a good logical point there. And you, again, not sure how true it is. Jack Sullivan said in an interview that Tim was responsible for both last season and this season transfers. Again, not sure, because we keep hearing everyone wants to lay claim to the good players that we've signed and wants nothing to do with the players that are no good. James, when Kudus comes back, I would like to see Paqueta benched. He's been very poor so far, in my opinion. I would hope being benched will give him a wake-up call. I have said before that perhaps he needs to spend time on the bench. Stephen, whoever is bringing in the likes of Fulkrug, who's an injury-prone cart horse, needs to go. That's on 100% on Steidten, without a doubt. And thank you, Charles. Look, 328 still watching. If you've yet to subscribe, I don't know what you're waiting for. I mean, you're not going to get as much content from anyone else on my own for 2 hours on a Monday. But seriously, if you're new to the channel, please become a subscriber. If you can't do that, then please at least hit the like button, which will be appreciated. Thank you for the reminder, Charles. If a club, Trini, has a technical director and they're not responsible for getting the players, the coach coaches them. If a club has a technical director, are they not responsible for getting the players? Yes, they are. And the coach coaches them. It's exactly what we thought. But I'm asking the question, what's going wrong? Is the coaching awful, or did Steidten give him a bad deal? You know, has Steidten brought in all the wrong players that Lopetegui can't coach in his manner? Which of that is it? Pierino. Dual reporting lines. I've never ever seen that work in my life. I've got to admit, I agree with you. Schenken, Stel, I think I'm with you on this. Too many cooks, far too many. Gennaro, De Zerbi led Sassuolo to top 8 finishes in Serie A. Just missing out on Europe, was doing okay with Shakhtar Donetsk, but had to leave because of the war in Ukraine. Thank you, GP. Someone was asking about you earlier on. I hope you're well, mate, and thank you for that. Really appreciated, mate. Stephen, they had the Duran deal done, but Sullivan was haggling over 3 mil whilst wasting 26 on a cart horse. This is what I don't believe. As much as I want to blame Sullivan on an awful lot of things, I cannot see that. I don't know. And the research I'm doing leads me to believe that that's not true. Why be 3, even 5 million pounds away for a player you want, and then go, I tell you what, we're going to go for someone else who is completely different to the player that we were chasing? It doesn't make sense. And to be quite honest with you, it doesn't even smack of that being a Sullivan thing. The person who got Fulkrug in was Tim Steidten. He knew Fulkrug from years back at Werder Bremen when they were both at the club, and he's known him for all of his career. Why walk away when you're meant to be that close? I still maintain I don't think Aston Villa were prepared to sell Duran unless they got, I can't remember his name, Omorodian or whatever, the guy that went to the Portuguese club. I still think Aston Villa were chasing another striker. They weren't getting that other striker, which is why they were hanging on to Duran. And then it got to the point where we were like, well, we can't wait any longer, so we're going to have to move on. So I genuinely, with the greatest of respect, Stephen, I genuinely don't think it was haggling over a few million pounds. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't, and I'll tell you why it doesn't make sense. Because the first signing we got was a young 18-year-old from Brazil who Sullivan signed off 20-odd million pounds on. You know, and then Kilman, who we all said wasn't worth 40 million, but because Lopetegui wanted him, we got Kilman in for 40 million. So that's why my head is telling me, no way did we pull the deal on the Duran signing just for a few million pounds. It makes absolutely no sense. And then you go off, or Steidten goes off, and then brings you a completely different striker, completely different age, completely different style for 25, 26 million pounds. I really, really don't think that's on Sullivan. I'm sorry to say, I know we want to blame Sullivan for everything, and he's got a lot to be blamed for. But in this case, no. You know, the Duran deal, I don't think was that far done, to be quite honest with you. Colin, I've now found out from some people told me the reason Steidten signed Guilherme was because he was earmarked for Amorim, that he flew over because he was interested and would have signed. So then why didn't Amorim apparently buy into the plan that Steidten and Sullivan had spoken to him about? He walked out of that meeting unimpressed, didn't want to be part of West Ham United. Navadius, it's a 3-way business. Tim, board and coach are all responsible for bringing players in. They work together on targets. Tim has the leading role in targets. Good point. Trini, Sullivan obviously still has a say. That's why to see the turnaround many fans want to see. That's why I want to see the turnaround many fans want to see. We would have to have a change of, to see the change, we'd have to have a change of ownership. Matthew, Claret and Booze broke the Allegri story. Interesting. I've not heard of it until then. Who else we got? Andrew. We missed a trick when we were linked with Arne Slot, and he was apparently very interested in coming to us. Did we? Oh, Arnie, we want you to come to West Ham. Yeah, I know, but apparently some club called Liverpool have called me, so I'm hanging on for a minute. All right then, Arnie, just let us know. West Ham or Liverpool. I love our club. I love us to be the biggest club in the world. But when teams like Liverpool come knocking on the door, what are you going to do? David is left bollock. Considering Antonio is going on international duty, would it be ideal to give that Brazilian boy a chance up top? Do we think Loppe will do that if he is still manager? That's an interesting question. And we know what Antonio is going to be like when he comes back. He's going to be absolutely knackered because he's going to fly halfway around the world. Juha. And that's why maybe I would give Ings an opportunity up top. Why is everything this negative? Maybe I need to only watch after we win. Sorry, mate. You know me. I always try to be positive. I'm trying not to be negative. But Avram, you're right. However, he would love thousands with no food drink club shop being used. Would embarrass him. Brady. Well, food and drink at the stadium doesn't go to the owners. The club shop, yeah, okay. Embarrassing Brady on TV, it would make a statement. One game should be chosen, one that's televised. What to do more marches, etc. I don't know. Ian, a bit late. What am I? Oh, mate, loads. We've talked about Steidten. We talked about Lopetegui, whether he's going to keep his job. We went through the academy. The women won their first game this season. The under-18s beat the top team in the under-18s 3-1. The under-21s didn't do so well. And we've spent most of the show talking about who's responsible for the signings. Does Steidten take responsibility? Is it all on Lopetegui or is it all on Sullivan? Trini, they sounded convinced that there was a chance of it happening, just saying what was happening. I don't know what you're responding to, so my apologies. Shows I'm far behind, so I'm trying to catch up. Just found out that women in general are happier than men. Most don't support West Ham and most don't have wives. Right, I might be 60, but I could still cause trouble up front. However, I need Wiggy on the wing. You really don't need, well, Wiggy will fart his way up the wing, I guess. Navadius, transitional season, it can happen after 11 games, especially after there is international break. Well, let me tell you a little story that I forgot to mention earlier on. At roughly this point in the season, back in 2017, there was a manager who, after 11 games, had only won 2, lost 6, drew the rest. And that was our very own Slaven Bilic. He got sacked just before just when the international break in November 2017 was kicking in, because it only won 2 games, lost 6, drawn the rest. At this moment in the league, at this moment in time, Lopetegui has won 3, drawn 5, and lost the rest. So we're only a couple of points better off than we were when Slaven Bilic was sacked way back in 2017. The board saw fit, or thought it was right, to sack Bilic for that very poor start in the season, and ironically took the opportunity to sack him during the international break. Strictly speaking, therefore, Lopetegui should be going as well, because his performance, or the performances of the team, are not much better than what they were under Bilic at the same time in the season back in 2017. I think the board are going to hang on for a little while longer. And I think we're then looking at, and I mentioned this in last week's show, we're then looking at the stats of Manuel Pellegrini when he got sacked. Because when Manuel Pellegrini got sacked after 19 games, he won 5. I can't remember how many he drew and how many he lost, but he only won 5. So far, West Ham have only won 3 games in the league this season. That means Lopetegui's got to do better than Manuel Pellegrini if he stays on in his role until the end of this calendar year in order to stand any chance of keeping his job. So this week is going to be interesting because if Lopetegui is not sacked for achieving more or less the same stats, wins, draws, defeats, to Bilic, then that means he's going to survive until the end of this calendar year. And then the target will be, how many games would he have won? If he wins more than 5 games, there's a chance he might stay on for the rest of the season. If he only wins 5 or 6 games, maybe even only 7 games, that's when possibly the board will pull the plug on Lopetegui. Let's scroll down. Colin. Stel, Palmeiras manager Ferreira was big success in Portugal, highly regarded, plays night football. I've got no doubt. I've got no doubt he does. But I didn't think Lopetegui, Steidten went out there to look for a manager. Carpi, I agree. Stel Steidten takes a lot of the blame for the mess we're in. It's interesting. I can't wait to get the script done because I want to get it right. I want to be as balanced as I can about it. But Steidten is creating an alarm bell. I'm not saying it's all down to him. Don't get me wrong. I think the coaching has been abysmal. Absolutely. Steidten does not want to say anything that drops Sullivan in it. Trenny, yeah, well, fair enough. Obsidian, Lopetegui is Sorthouse client style. I know that. That's how Sullivan knows him and probably why he chose him. That's possible. Very possible. Mark, how many players did Moyes sell for more than he bought them? Can't think of any. He didn't. He did it. Declan Rice. Nevadius. Hammerette, we are better at dragging ball from our own half. The problem is midfield and attacking isn't clicking for us to do any damage. I was saying earlier in the show, Nevadius, that maybe we should go back to a counter-attacking display. We were quite good when we were counter-attacking, playing counter-attacking football, and maybe that's what we should go back to. Colin, you're right. Steidten is like Lord Lucan, keeping a very low profile now. Schenken, yes, I have, but in brief periods to HH, 20 minutes here and there. At the moment, the team is low confidence and they have to ride it out. Hammer it. Midfield isn't clicking. It's non-existent. Plus, what's the point of possession when we don't do anything with it? Our attacking line has been worse this season, which is why I'm saying, should we go back to counter-attacking play? Graham, the buck stops with Sullivan. He has made poor decisions from start to finish, and I can't see any way forward whilst he has the final say. Has he made a mistake then with Steidten, or was that a good idea? Jerry, good evening, mates. Oh, Gary, sorry, mate. The person who told Nick on Clown Blues has been wrong a few times, so don't believe it until they sack Lopetegui. Evening, MJ. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Avram Grant Slipper. Thank you. Thank you. Like, share, and subscribe. That would be absolutely fantastic. Become a subscriber and listening to me rant on a Monday night. What could go wrong? So I thought, put the next one up. Neil, I found myself walking the pup with 20 minutes to go. Picking up his crap was more preferable to watching it on TV. GJ, I went for an interview to join the fire brigade. What's my philosophy for life? I was asked what's my philosophy. I said firefighting with fire. I didn't get the job. MJ, as bad a decision it seems to be, I honestly think Fulkrug was a panic buy to try and appease the need for a striker after the Duran saga fell through. Avram, Duran's agent came out and said Villa kept moving the goalposts in order to corner Duran into a new deal, which he was resisting at the time. There you go. There's another take on that. Trodge, we didn't spend 20 million lump. We was more like 5 million with add-ons that need to be met, in my opinion. For who? 20 million plus 5 million add-on. Who do you mean? Stel, Colin. Best buys for me, Wan-Bissaka, Todibo, Kilman, Somerville, Guilherme. Talented player. The rest I will get rid of, the rest of them. Yeah, they don't always go right. That is very true. That's very true. Let's scroll down, and who else do we have? Hamret. Fulkrug seems like a big mistake by Steidten. No more water. Mistake by Steidten. Yes, we have. Haven't seen him in a run of games yet. Still pay too much for him, but we were desperate at that point, I think. Probably we were. Don't disagree with that. Gerard, it's hard to soar with eagles when you are working with turkeys. Very poignant. Tim bought the majority of deals, so he is to blame for players, but the coach has to take the blame for setup and pattern of play. Yeah, so they're both taking a little bit of the blame. I'll go with that. Happy with that. Trodge, Sully has a history of reporting artificially high transfer fees. Well, they're recorded. They're actually, they've got to be recorded. You can actually see them on file that what we paid, etc. Neil, if it's down to the new players brought in, why have the likes of Bowen turned mediocre? Screams of problems with setup and tactics. Absolutely, Neil. I did say that earlier on. I did try to balance that and said, you know, if it is the coaching, then exactly that, because we've seen. But then that's when I got on to, should we be playing a different style of football? Should we be reverting back to a counter-attacking football, which probably suits the likes of Bowen and various other players as well? Novadius, that makes no sense. If Guilherme was meant for Amorim, we would have called the deal when we would have called the deal off when we failed to get Amorim. I'm not buying that about Amorim, to be honest. Trini, Slot or Amorim were never going to come to West Ham. They both ended up at clubs they wanted to manage, and that I totally agree with. You know, I hate feeling that way because it's West Ham and we think we're bigger than we should be, than we are. But that's the honest truth. Slot and Amorim have gone to clubs that are bigger than West Ham. You see how hard it was to say it. Paul, Fulkrug had a really good Euros for Germany. Villa didn't need to sell Duran after they sold other players. There you go. Gary, the only thing this time on international break, we don't play until the Monday, gives the international players an extra couple of days rest. And congratulations, by the way, to Bowen. He's been called into the England squad. I don't know if it's because of injuries. Who's injured? What's his name from Man City, isn't he? Grealish, I think. I don't know if Grealish has come out of but anyway, Bowen is in the England squad, so well done to him. Fucking back up. Anyway, Neil, is everyone still convinced there's no chance with a relegation scrap when the likes of Ipswich look good trying to win and not draw? Stupidly, I don't think we will be. Mark, good evening, mate. I think another name that hasn't been spoken much for the head coach job at West Ham if Lopetegui is sacked is Andrew, who dares wins, he who hesitates doesn't, which is what we do over and over again, in my opinion, and one of the biggest reasons we miss out on so many targets. Yeah, make you right. Don't disagree with that. I think there's been times when we've shied away from players who could have really elevated us. Ian, Lopetegui will forever remain at the top of Seville's history for his brilliant achievement of a 6th Europa League title in 2019-20 season. His first in charge cannot take all the blame. Said that earlier on. First season in charge at Seville, got rid of 20 players, brought in about 17 players, finished 4th in the league and won the Europa League title. Budgie, Clive, Lampard Jr. is just not good enough for the Premier League. We'll keep it there. Nobody. Good evening, nobody. As West Ham fans, we're used to a roller coaster of a manager. Personally, I like Brendan Rodgers. I wouldn't shy away from Rodgers, to be honest with you. I think it'd be interesting. Would it give us the type of football that we would want at West Ham? I think it'd be interesting. Vonnie. It took Irola 10 games to get Bournemouth clicking. We're 11 games in and there's still no sign of anything clicking with us yet. Good point. Graham, when Sullivan finally leaves, I certainly hope he writes a book about his time at West Ham, as it would be great to actually know the truth, whatever it is. Would you believe what he writes? Avram, how far behind am I? Not far. I would play the Mexican thug in the 8 and the slappy star boy and betting man as two number 10s in a midfield triangle, fast, pacey, aggressive, and unhinged. Prime Barclays nostalgia. David, I think it's unfortunate that us fans never listened to Birmingham fans when they warned us about Golden, Sullivan, and Brady. Everything they said was true. It's not as if we had. I'm distracted. It's not as if we had a choice. You know, they were our saviors. Don't forget. What are you talking about, Findus? Findus. What are you talking about, GP? Findus crispy style pancakes. I remember Findus crispy pancakes when I was a kid. Colin, still, Loppy should go now while we have the chance, but with Sullivan, I don't think he will do it, for he don't like admitting to his mistakes. Sullivan is such a dodgy character. We all agree with that. Gennaro. But I think you're right. I don't think Lopetegui will go. I think Sullivan is likely to give it until the end of this calendar year. Gennaro, I don't think Steidten moving on would be a great loss. He's got far too much to say for himself and is settling Lopetegui up to be the fall guy. Lopetegui has been awful. Those. I think there is an element of blame to go Steidten's way. Sharky, eight players withdrew from the England squad. Shows how much they wanted to play for them. 8 players withdrew. Oh, well, if I was Bowen, I would have just said on your bike, mate. Pierino. For Bowen not to be playing well, smacks of Lopetegui losing the dressing room. He loves West Ham. Yeah, that's a good point. Ted. Bowen looks like a ghost on the pitch, like he's not even there. Just hope Loppy goes, we get someone decent in as a manager. Start at least turning up and having a go. That's what I want to play for the badge. Do we go back to a counter-attacking game to get the best out of Jared Bowen? Who else do we have here? I'm down to the bottom. That's it. I know there's one or two others, but you're all talking to each other. I'm going to call it there. Erik ten Hag, absolutely not. David Moyes, anyone? Actually, for a joke, to cheer myself up in the first half, I actually started singing David Moyes' Claret and Blue Army. Didn't go down too well. Neil, for me, low block or higher block, the problem is nothing really has changed. Apart from our weakness, striker-wise, we still have players that could play an attacking game. Mallard, I'm not saying that I want Moyes back, but he would have won that Everton match in that situation. There you go. There you go. Let's leave it there. Let's not talk about him, Ian. All right, Navadius, one more. To get the best out of Bowen, we must play direct football. As soon as he has to slow things down, he looks lost. God, that's woken you all up. Ian, Lopetegui inherited a group of players who were on the floor at Wolves. He changed that in his very first game in charge, found 8 more wins to eventually finish above Moyes. So he's not that much of a bad manager then, is he? Andrew, with all the backstabbing and blame going on, I can see us not spending anything in January. Neither can I. Right, that's it. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. Look, 302 still online. Come on, people, become a subscriber of the channel, and that would be great. Thank you if you do. And even if you can't become a subscriber, at least hit the like button, which would be most helpful. Thank you all for watching. Really appreciated. Thank you all for getting involved in the chat. Really, really appreciated. I am writing a script about Steidten, so when I've got that done, I will put out a show. And obviously, if there are any breaking news, etc., coming through, I will obviously do a show on that as well. Really, really appreciated. Galinetta to you as well, Fatakis, mate. I hope you're well. Really, really appreciated. And have a good week. We've got 2 weeks off now from all this nonsense. We don't have to worry about it. Now all we've got to worry about is our national team's doing well. England. I wonder if I should fly over to Cyprus and watch them play. Have a great week, and I'll see you all soon.